Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. Jerri, when I did professional development, I was a consultant. I did workshops all over. And whenever I would do workshops on personalized learning, I would have these faces from these teachers that were like, wow, this sounds so exciting, but it's not possible. We can't do it. So I always had to come up with a modified approach, because if there isn't a change in the way that we do things, if we're still going to keep pacing guides and things like that, if there is no support from administration to do this, it's really hard. And sometimes we have teachers that go rogue, which is kind of, they have to do it that way. But wouldn't it be great to do it systematically throughout with support from administration? And then maybe I always think AI is going to be the driver to push things along so that we're all doing personalized learning all the time. And I'm really excited for our guest today to dig into this more.
Yes, I am excited for our guest today too. We have Nicki Slaugh on, and Jamie, we met her this summer at the tea that ClassLink sponsors for ISTE. It's a women's tea, and she was there, and Nicki and I just got to visiting, and I was just blown away by the work she is doing. She has recently written a book with Eric Scheninger, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the book and a lot about personalized learning, just as you were talking about, Jamie. So, Nicki, welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. We are so happy to have you here today. And I wouldn't want the audience, she is working hard. She texted and said, I'm in with a parent. I'll be right there. So we know what a busy life you lead. Yeah. And we are so happy that you have time to join us here today. So welcome.
I feel so honored to have been invited on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, we are happy to have you here. And Nicki, would you start out by just telling us what you do, and then we'll work into the book and the personalized learning.
Yes. All right. I've been in education for 23 years. So I've had the opportunity to be a teacher. I taught elementary, kindergarten through third grades for 10 years. I was an instructional coach that focused on integrated technology for 4 years and worked with teachers. 9 years, I was a junior high principal, and I have a dual role. I'm a high school principal as well as a director of personalized competency-based learning for my districts. Whoa. Crazy. And that's been my little journey the past 23 years.
Wow. I know that is full of experiences, and you've had some of the toughest jobs in the district. Kindergarten teacher,
wow,
and principal. Those are tough jobs. So you know what it's like. So what got you started thinking about personalized learning?
Right from the very beginning, I just felt that students deserved more than a one-size-fits-all approach. For too long, I feel like schools are built around systems that focus on systems versus focusing on students. So my why has been my entire journey and will always be, every student, every day, whatever it takes. And so I just feel like the big push was, I don't want to conform to a system. I want to meet the needs of our students.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get your teachers on board with this? Because I hear a lot of teachers say personalized learning sounds great, but it's too much work. I can't do all of it.
Yeah, which is what I got a lot too. I had to give them a modified approach, but also because of the system, right? So how do you balance that? Because we really, in some cases, certain districts are really bound by the system. How do you get by that? I mean, I'm sure you can do it in your own school because you are leading them and giving them that support. So how do they respond? How do they get there? And then how do you deal with the system?
Okay, first of all, I'm a risk taker and a questioner.
Yes.
So I think you have to have a mindset that you're willing to take risks as well as question things. So that's my mindset and how I lead. I like to hire teachers and work with teachers who are also questioners. I feel like in order to make an impact and make change, you need to move away from compliance and focus on engagement. So Arthur Brooks did a study on happiness, and something that I remember he said in his book was that in order to be truly happy, you need to find a purposeful and meaningful job. So what I do when I'm trying to help teachers switch their mindset, and I talk about teacher burnout and what's actually causing teacher burnout. And a lot of times it's following programs that they're not passionate about, grading and scoring papers, fighting missing due dates, students not being engaged, students not wanting to come to class, not being able to meet the needs of students, right? So when you remove all of that and you focus on meeting the needs of all students, as well as being designers of your own curriculum. So I treat my teachers as their professionals. I give them firm goals and high expectations. We have a very strict policy on what competency is. But after that, I let them be the designers and create the content they need to meet students based off their interests and data and benchmarks. When you do that, they start to fall in love with their job again, and their job starts to have meaning and purpose. We don't correct every single assignment. We're not nitpicky on do this assignment, turn it in, do this assignment, do it in. We switch the focus from points to learning. And when doing that, by creating proficiency skills and meeting face-to-face with our students and doing feedback and conferencing, they start to form relationships with the students.
Absolutely.
I could go on. I know those other questions, but I think once they see the light of the children's eyes again, and they're focusing on learning, then it all makes sense. And they really fall in love with their job again.
See, that's exactly what teachers want to see. They want to see the students connecting. They want to build those relationships. They want to have that space for that conferencing so those relationships can be built and for them to formally assess students. So now I think you've got the buy-in from the teachers, buy-in from students, buy-in from parents. You're the principal, but then what about when we have to have our dreaded testing, when we have to have report cards? How do you handle that?
Okay. Well, the cool thing about personalized learning is the first step is to identify your competencies and proficiency rate. So when you create proficiency skills, that helps the students have a roadmap in their learning and how to identify where they're at in the learning process, as well as the teacher. So proficiency skills guide everything, right? I put a heavy emphasis on formative assessments as well as the summative assessment. I do not grade any of the practices or the assignments. That is a time where our students are wanting to also take risks. It's okay to fail, try things. So during the learning process and the practices, that's where that magic happens, right? They're experimenting, they're trying things, they're trying to figure out how they learn best. During that, we're not grading all that. That's where when you move from a teacher-centered room to a student-centered room, the teacher's free to wander around, meet with the kids, ask questions. While you're doing that, you're doing some exit tickets, some formative assessments. That is going to guide your instruction for the next day. That's how you know who you're going to meet with one-on-one or small group. And then in the end, we have what we call prove-its. Our summative assessments are prove-its. How we do that with competence-based learning is all I care about is that they can prove understanding. There isn't just one way, right, to prove understanding. So we're also opening it up for students to have multiple ways to prove understanding. So going through this process, the teachers actually know their students better and could tell you where the students are at with their learning better than if they're just submitting assignments and calculating points. So once you create that environment, then we do, so you said grades. Let's see what you say. How do we do grades? Well, we're tracking through our competencies, if they know it or if they don't. At the end of every quarter, we do what's called performance reviews. This is where every student meets one-on-one with the teacher. They're a self-advocate for themselves. They're showing all of their proficiency skills, our student tracker. They're bringing all their evidence of learning, and we've trained them to articulate what grade they feel like they deserve based on what they've been doing. So they have this meaningful connection with their teacher, talking. It's purposeful. They set goals for the next quarter and they decide the grade together. John Hattie was a big advocate on self-grading and self-assessment and self-reflection. So that's how we get the grade. But you have to remind me your other questions since I'm a rambler.
No, that was great. That was terrific. And so I guess really, I think you explained it, but I guess that's with students sort of learning the same thing and personalized learning. If they're taking their own track in terms of their interests, How do you pull it back to that umbrella concept that everyone needs to know, yet they're learning it through their own path? So are you using personalized learning where they get to learn what they want to learn, when they want to learn it?
Yeah.
And
So
content delivery.
absolutely. That's why we have the competencies. Once they prove understanding, they can move on. We do a lot of pre-assessments, and if they can prove through the pre-assessment they're competent, they don't have to do all the
Right.
work. So this is for the self-pacing. So personalization is pacing, self-pacing, and developing pathways, but it's also learner agency and voice and choice, right? So with the competency skills, that's how self-pacing works. If they already know it, we're going to let them fly. If they are not competent, then we have more time to meet their needs. And I'm a quality over quantity girl. So I would rather take time to identify where their learners are and meet their needs. Having students master, say, 10 competencies in a quarter versus go through 15 to be exposed.
Learning. What mastery
So
learning.
that's why I love personalization, because students are learning. We're creating pathways for them based on their needs. We're allowing them to fly if they want to fly. And built in that, besides self-pacing, we have students can choose how they want to learn, how they want to practice, and how they want to prove. So an example of choosing how you want to learn would be, do you want to learn with a teacher in small group? Do you want to learn off of video, pre-recorded videos from the teachers? Or do you want to listen to a podcast? Do you want to read and annotate? We have those avid readers, right? Some are gamified. So the teachers are being the designers of the curriculum that I told you. Instead of spending all of their time correcting papers and scoring and going through the motion, they're actually designing their choice boards based on what they know with their students. So they can choose how they learn best, which we want to create ownership and buy-in with the kids to do it to increase engagement. Then when it comes to practice, some kids might like online simulation, say in science, where other kids might want labs. We still are focusing on the same competency and standard with high expectations, but we're giving them choice in how to learn. And then again, same with choice in how to prove, a variety of ways to prove. So that's kind of the whole picture of personalization. I think a lot of people think it's just putting kids on a device with an adaptive software. I do value that. I think it's important to identify holes and gaps and give them that opportunity, but it's more than that. It's increasing, identify, and it's also teaching students how to think versus what to think. It's allowing them to take ownership. It's giving them more responsibility and teaching them life skills. I want them to be intrinsic learners so that when they leave me, they'll know how to, continue to learn throughout their life, not just play the game.
Yeah.
Nicki, there's one word that just keeps coming up in my mind as I hear you talk, when you talk about your teachers and you talk about your students, and the word I'm hearing is trust. You are trusting your teachers to be professionals, and I think that makes a huge difference. You're trusting the students to make choices for themselves instead of making them for them. And then that leads me to ask you a question. Do you find when students are helping to determine their grade or their score, are they harder on themselves than the teachers would have been, or easier on themselves? How has that played out?
We were fearful at first to try this, right? We had done a lot of self-assessing and self-reflecting throughout the learning process. So we hadn't actually dove into self-rating at the time. Right before that, we were kind of nervous. But to be honest, they were more hard on themselves than we were. We had to remind them certain things that they're doing that shows that they were proactive in their learning to understand that they do deserve that A, right? You have those couple that are going to try to negotiate because they don't want to get grounded or they, you know what I mean? But all in all, when you create a teacher-centered environment, these kids feel safe by these teachers because they're not in front of the room anymore, where they're always circulating or meeting small group or one-on-one. They feel like they can ask questions. They feel like they can be honest with them. And then the teachers are constantly providing feedback back to motivate and empower them, that it just becomes such a powerful experience. It's the best time. Like, I love to walk around my school just to hear those conversations and see. But more importantly than them choosing their grades is the conversation where they're setting goals for the next quarter based on what they did well or areas that they want to improve on. And again, we're giving them time to self-reflect and set those goals.
Right. And just the setting of goals, has an increment of change for them, that if you have students set goals, they really do learn better.
Yes.
And I was surprised. We did this with third graders, and we were shocked at when they set the goal and they kept a chart, how excited they were to see that bar rise. And it really does make a difference.
Magical. It really is magical
Yes.
when it all comes together. And you do need to have the support of administration. So, the best teachers are risk takers. And when they have the support to do that, then the game changes completely. And they move from, as you were mentioning, that sage on the stage to that guide on the side. And it makes that space for all of the differentiation that you were talking about. So that,
Well, yes,
Okay.
no, perfect. Add into that. So obviously in the elementary, 23 years ago, what kind of started this was I was teaching first grade. And as I was getting to know my students, I was having students that were entering my classroom, not being able to recognize letters and sounds. But then I was also having students that had had an amazing experience with their families and they were reading chapter books. But I was giving this one size fits all approach, right? And I understand and support direct instruction and research-based curriculum to ensure that we hit our targets. I do believe in accountability, but I also believe in it's our job as educators to meet the needs of all kids. So I had to create an environment where I could teach letters and sounds at the same time as start to teach reading as thinking and comprehension strategies. So that was the light bulb moment up front when I needed to do personalized. Over the years, it's changed from mastery-based learning to standards-based learning to personalized to competency-based. Now I feel like it's called enhanced learning. So, we're always changing our vocabulary, but all in all, it's giving students what they need when they need it, right? And focusing on the who versus the what. Now, fast forward to when I went to a junior high setting, this is when I started to see more compliance versus engagement, more tardies, more attendance. When you move into those teenage years, you're back to what you're just saying, the sage on the stage and teachers talking at the kids and kids supposed to memorize the information from the teacher. There's not a lot of autonomy anymore. So we go from an elementary setting that's done station rotations, differentiation, moving into a one size fits all approach. And this is where we start to lose our kids. So when I started doing my drop-ins my very first year as a secondary administrator, what popped in my mind was, can I do what I did in elementary in a secondary setting?
Yeah.
And that kind of is what drove my decision. I didn't want to see those kids compliant or disengaged. And my teachers those teachers were even more burnt out because they were having those conversations with kids like, please don't wait till the last 2 weeks of the quarter to turn everything in. Like the focus really wasn't learning. The focus was on completion versus competency and points and playing the game. The word learn never came up. So I removed teacher desks completely. And then I got rid of all desks and did tables. And I just started taking time to train my teachers on the why. And that's when that purpose and meaning came up, that they did get the buy-in, because when we started focusing on learning and giving them opportunities to get to know their kids, they started to love their job even more.
Yeah, of course.
And that's where the book kind of came about, was my experience in the elementary setting, and then seeing if I could use those same strategies by putting students first in a secondary setting. And we pulled it off. We were still doing station rotations. We're using benchmarks and data like we did in elementary to group the kids, to challenge the kids. We created proficiency skills. I completely removed points. I jumped in 100%, 0 points, 0 extra credit, 0 percentages. That's when we developed our proficiency skills based on emerging, developing, mastering, and extending. Once we vertically aligned, horizontally aligned, created this, it really was like a little utopia and a dream world, because students weren't confined to seat time anymore because of the self-pacing from our competency skills. Students weren't feeling like they are forced to learn a certain way because of the choice. Students had more meaningful conversations. They were learning how they were learning. This is when parents got happy, teachers got happy, so that's kind of where that process came. And after that, fast forward to high school, now I take a different approach, where you asked about pathways. Now where we're in high school, I still have self-pacing advancing on competency. But now we're trying to create pathways on, do you want to do an internship and try to identify your passions and figure out what your job's going to be when you grow up during the high school years versus be set in a classroom all the time, just doing what the teacher says?
Yeah.
Or are you advancing at a pace that you can do early college? Or have you identified that you want trade school, and what opportunities can I give you to actually work with industry and start identifying your trades by going to our local trade school or bringing industry in? So that's the cool thing about high school, is now we're even personalizing even more based off their career.
And you're still having them do, the true differentiation and having stations that's still built into the high school, right? Because when I've done that with high school, it changes everything. They love it. The kids love it. The teachers love it. So it doesn't matter the grade level. It works.
It doesn't. And that's what I was trying to say. No matter what grade level, I believe that it will increase happiness for all.
Yes.
So that brought you to the book. How did you get connected with Eric Scheninger to create the book? I love that you wrote this book to help many people.
Yes. Okay. I do believe that as a leader, you have to be the energy you want to attract, and I need to lead by example every day, right? So the way my leadership style is, I'm always in the classroom. So walkthroughs are number one, and I'm providing feedback to my teachers. I started thinking over the years, we're doing this transition, we're getting a lot of recognition, we're doing tours. In my heart, I'm doing the right thing because we're blowing up, like everything's working. But really, I couldn't find anyone in the state of Utah that was doing what I was doing 100% to give me feedback. So I started thinking, who can I bring in to model to my teachers that even though I'm a leader, that I also should receive some feedback? Because we kind of had the method at Quest, never stop learning. So I had read Disruptive Thinking, and Eric's philosophies aligned with mine. And it was really hard to find someone at this time that had philosophies aligned with mine. And I had the opportunity of meeting him at a charter school in Utah. He was hired to provide consulting and coaching. I was invited from that school to also come because they had toured my school. So they're like, listen, this is a win-win. Since you've helped us so much by providing PE for our teachers, we have Eric Scheninger coming. Will you come? Do you want to come meet him? And so I was like, absolutely.
Yes.
So funny story. So I'm there. Eric's kind of looking at me like, why are you here? Right. I don't know if you know Eric, but he has that little arrogance about him. And I was like, okay. So I'm like, I got this. Like, I'm not nervous. I'm going to do this. They had Eric and I go into classrooms to provide a report on what we saw. So Eric goes like, we'll compare notes as we're walking in. We'll compare notes after each class. So like, all right, I got to earn the respect. Fair. So we're going in, we're talking in between classes. I'm so excited because I've always wanted to meet him. Our thoughts are aligning. He's starting to trust me more. At the end of that day, they had asked myself and my staff to speak to their school board to help them switch to competency-based learning. So he stayed and he listened to our spill. He comes up to me after, you can walk the walk, but can you talk the talk? Or you could talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? I'm like, dang. All right. And so I said, actually, I have been wanting to hire someone to give me feedback. I would love to hire you to have you come to my school, watch me lead, go into my classrooms, provide me feedback so I can model to my students. And then you can see if what we just said we're really doing. So I hired him. Long story short, he came once a month that year. We developed this really close relationship. And he just, I don't know, he was blown away because I jumped in 100%. He said there's a lot of pieces of personalization throughout the nation when he's helping schools, but no one really jumped in 100 plus got rid of points. So he was fascinated. I had told him it was a dream to write a book. And he's like, you know what? Why don't we write a book together?
Perfect.
Wow.
Perfect. That is a cool story. And that is, what you just said again is really the differentiator, because there are different pieces of personalized learning happening everywhere. And when I would do workshops, I could see people being able to take different parts, but going back to their individual districts, if they don't have the support, if nothing else is going to change as part of the system, then they're still just going to be able to do just their own little version. So once you were able to make that switch with the grading system, then it's, and everyone is on board that way because they're seeing how it works and the happiness, the joy, as you mentioned, that it brings to the students, to the parents, to the teachers. That's the game changer right there. So it just takes a risk taker like you and someone who has, is fearless. You have to be fearless to be able to take
It was scary.
system down. That's what
Oh,
we
and
need.
I think you would ask assessments. I know I hop around. So I wanted to, you would ask me like how were my test scores and if I stressed about test scores. So we talked about grading, but test scores, I was very fortunate. So I was told when I took over the junior high to transform it. It was a traditional setting. They told me I needed to increase test scores. We were well below our state average. Then I needed to retain teachers because teachers were coming and going. And then I also needed to increase enrollment.
Wow.
So that was a lot. And I was an elementary teacher and glorified cheerleader in a way. So I'm walking into with teenagers, wondering if they're going to like my vibe or how it's going to be. But then I realized that where I kind of lead with love person, even teenagers need love. I was kind of nervous at first, but it doesn't matter the age. They're all kids and they get that attention and the love empowerment. But through everything that we created as a school and throughout the journey, our scores were always well above the state and the surrounding community schools by us with our same demographics, as well as teacher retention was very high because once they tried this, nobody wanted to go back to traditional. We started to create this little utopia where it was so nice. When we started to interview teachers, as if teachers had a move or they had a baby and were interviewing, I would let my whole staff be part of the interview process so that they could get to know the teacher. Because I do believe your vibe attracts your tribe. And where we had the system really working, we needed to find people, again, that were questioners and risk takers. So by going through this process, we did all of those 3 goals that they had asked me to do, as well as created an environment where all the teachers were a team. And then it was beautiful because with all the interacting with the students through personalization, the students felt close with their teachers. So the whole package really ended up working. I didn't necessarily know. I just went with my gut feeling, should I do this? And I knew it worked in elementary, but it worked.
Not only your fearlessness, not only your drive, but also, and your risk taking, but also you took your experience of having been an instructional coach and you didn't put that in the past. That was all part of your leadership as a principal. So a lot of times principals don't have the opportunity to be in the classroom as much as they want to. And not only that, but to give in the moment feedback to teachers.
Yeah.
You never let that instructional coach part of you go. And you knew that's what was needed in order to make that important shift and to guide them, to make them know that they were supported and that, nothing's gonna be perfect all the time. And that is cool. We're going to learn from our mistakes and just keep going. So that, mentality of an instructional coach that you brought to being a principal, I think is also part of the game-changing aspect of this.
I didn't lose the drive of what it's like being in the classroom or coaching. So I'm glad you touched on that. My time with my teachers are very sacred. So when I did hire Eric, he'd say, can I come on Fridays? I was like, nope, Fridays are the one day that I get PD with my teachers. Like that's 100% where we solve problems. First off, we always celebrate success and wins. That's how we start our meetings, but then we identify problems together. And then after that, I would personalize my PD based off subject matters. Because what we do in math for personalization might not be the same that we do in science, right? We have more avoidance and choice in science and deeper learning, where in math, we did where math is a foundational subject where you can build off skills you had previously learned. They could actually pace faster in math than even science because of that, right? So as I'm working with my teachers, I would personalize my PD to meet their needs also. And I think that's what's important is I was in the trenches with them. I listened to them. I valued their voice. They're making the magic happen. I am a visionary and a risk taker, but again, they're doing the work. I gave a lot of surveys to students. That's how I identified why they weren't going to class or why they were tardy. So hearing student voice was really important. So I think a combination of coaching, guiding, letting them fail, really just worked in my favor. Again, it was just a process that worked. There's not one right way. So please know it's okay if you take bits and pieces. So in the book, it's really cool. You can start with voice and voice if that's all you can do within your constraints of your school or district, or you can start with self-pacing and competency skills. That I love that it's not a one size fits all approach or like a curriculum program that everyone has to follow. You can take all the personalized strategies and implement it whatever fits your school's needs.
Yes.
So
That's pretty much
really
the
nice.
way you have to do it, because that's exactly the way I always presented it, because every district's different. You know, you're in every state's different. So that's the way to do it, because it's not like it's all or nothing. And you shouldn't really ever feel that way. At least if you're able to do, you know, process or product differentiation, you know, that's awesome. If you can't do content differentiation as much, then that's okay. But, you know, just building it in and giving students, just making it their own, making them part of the learning process. That's really what it's all about. Yeah.
Nicki, I admire that you showed them what it's like to continue to be a learner as well, to have someone come in and give you feedback. I think that's very powerful modeling for your staff as well. Now, you haven't mentioned the name of the book, and I'm sure people love to know what it is.
All right. It's called Personalize. So just personalize, meeting the needs of all learners.
Can you show us? Do you have it?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Oh, that's nice.
Excellent.
Love it.
Oh, fantastic. And it's a book that you could use to scale personalized learning in your school or district. Is that correct?
We wrote it K-12. I didn't write it based off my exact school model. We took the ideas from my model as well as ideas that Eric had seen while he consults and coaches, because we had two different lenses. He's been out of the classroom for a while as an administrator. He's been a consultant and a coach. So we have his perspective as well as mine as being as a practitioner still. So we just took both of our ideas and tried to create something for K-12 educators where it doesn't even matter what chapter you start on. You could take bits and pieces, or you can do the full package. We do have like some experiences based from what I had done at my school when I wrote the book, but also just like generic ideas. And there's QR codes with samples and different things. There's a study guide you can get with it. Eric and I also do consulting and coaching. So we're always available to meet the needs and work with anyone. We do keynotes on it. We consult, we coach, we guide leaders through the process. We've done workshops for teachers. So we're always here, even if it's just set up a Zoom and talk. All I truly care about is that students love learning and teachers love their job. That's kind of my mission, is just to bring that love for teaching and educating again. There's a lot of negative on social media right now when it comes to education. So I really feel like my whole purpose was helping students feel like they're valued and seen, letting them learn how to think, learn how to learn, not just what to learn, giving teachers freedom to feel valued and seen also, treat them like professionals, trust them because they're the ones in the classroom. Still have high expectations and firm goals, obviously, so we meet our competencies and our standards. And then basically, my favorite quote is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So I think we got to break the tradition.
Yes.
Right. And we've done that in education. We have expected different results and we just keep riding that dead horse. Yes.
Over and over. And then
over.
Well, why is it not working? But then no one really dares take that risk, right?
That is true. Yes. Wow. This is very interesting what you have shared with us today, and we appreciate your time. Is there a place people can go to get the book or to get a hold of you if they wanted consulting? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the book's on Amazon. So you could just search Personalize and you can look up Eric Scheninger, Nicki Slaugh. So Amazon, really easy. And then I do have a website, nickislaugh.com. I am on Instagram. So if you go to nickislaugh.com, everything's linked there, my email, my Instagram. But I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, everywhere. Always available. Always open to chat about education.
Oh, excellent. This has been a great podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your busy day and for sharing all of these resources and ideas that you've shared with us today.
I know it was a lot, so hopefully it just empowers you all to start, but I appreciate you inviting me on here, and yeah, good luck to everyone.
Oh, yes, and good luck to you as well.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.